Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello, hello. We're going to give it a few more seconds while people roll in. But as we wait, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know whether you're a CFP, a financial coach, or a nonprofit professional. You can also let us know what organization you're with. All righty. Okay, so we have a few more people here, so let's get started. Welcome. My name is Jordan Tobias, and I'm the manager of grants and programs here at the Foundation for Financial Planning. We're also joined by Rachel Roth, who is our Senior Director of Grants and Programs, and she will speak towards the end of the webinar. Rachel and I are so pleased to be here for our webinar, Helping Clients Overcome Money Shame and Financial Trauma, with financial therapist Rakim Sabri. Like all of our webinars, this webinar is eligible for CFP and AFC continuing education credit. If you're a CFP, we will submit your credit to the CFP board, and all of our AFCs in the audience will need to submit a code to AFCPE themselves, and Rachel will let you know the code towards the end of the webinar, and I will also email it out. Before I introduce our speaker today, I would love to spend a few moments talking about FFP and the work we do to expand access to pro bono financial planning for people in need. People ask all the time, why pro bono financial planning? And the answer is simple. We know that millions of Americans need but can't access quality and ethical financial advice. So for almost 30 years, our goal has been to help communities in need by creating better access to quality financial advice and guidance. We do this in three major ways with your support. First, we develop and support pro bono financial planning programs in partnership with nonprofits across the country by providing them grants, technical assistance, and other resources to ensure that FFP-supported programs are effectively reaching people that are in need. Second, we recruit and train financial advisors to do pro bono service and connect them directly to volunteer opportunities through our platform, probonoplannermesh.org. And third, we lead the movement to foster pro bono service within the profession via original research, industry partnerships, and public awareness activities. We also offer a number of resources to our pro bono volunteers. First, we have our pro bono financial planning volunteer training, which is a free 1-hour online module that helps advisors understand the basics of how to provide pro bono service to underserved members of our community. The training is free. It's approved for 1 hour of CE credit by the CFP board. We also offer worksheets, webinars like these, and user-friendly disclosure forms for your pro bono engagements. We also have probonoplannermatch.org, which connects CFP professionals with volunteer opportunities at nonprofits nationwide. Nonprofits register on our site and post opportunities for CFP only to volunteer and provide free, no-string-attached financial advice and guidance to people in need. And CFP professionals can register on the site and browse opportunities. Please feel free to reach out to me or Rachel if you would like to learn more and have a walkthrough of the site. Lastly, we provide E&O liability insurance, complimentary for advisors who connect with pro bono volunteer opportunities through our site or volunteer with any of our FFP grantees. So, I encourage every CFP who has joined us today to join the pro bono movement by getting involved however you can, whether that's registering on our site, probonoplannermatch.org, signing up to receive our latest pro bono news, or support our mission with a gift, because we couldn't do it without you. So you can either connect with me or my colleagues listed on the screen. Now, with that, we are thrilled to have Rakim Sabri join us today. Rakim is an accredited financial counselor, financial therapist, and consultant on financial and personal empowerment, especially in Black and Brown communities. So let's welcome him today. Hi, Rakim. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. I see a couple of friends in the chat, and I'm going to keep the chat open so that I can see the engagement, so I can ask you guys questions. I know you can't come off of mute. A couple of housekeeping things. Q&A rather, is going to be held at the end of this session. There's going to be a Q&A box that you guys can put those questions in. Please refrain from asking questions about this presentation in the chat. We'll keep the chat clear so that I can see the engagement from you guys. And then towards the end of this presentation, we're going to stop. We're going to have a moment to kind of pause and reflect. And there's also a survey there. When you get the survey, or when you complete the survey, you will actually get access to the slides. So I'm anticipating that question in advance. So let's get started. Share my screen with you guys. All right. So we're here to talk about helping your clients overcome money shame and financial trauma. I am an AFC and financial therapist. Most of my work is centered around financial trauma specifically, but these things are entangled, as you guys will see throughout this presentation. Before we get started, I just want to ask, and you guys can put a 1 in the chat if you agree with this statement. How many of you have worked with clients who have demonstrated money shame? Yeah, I figured I'd see a lot of 1s, and that tells me that you guys are familiar with money shame. So this is a good start to this presentation. So I want to go over just kind of high level what we're going to discuss. I'm going to introduce money shame, which you guys seem to be pros at. So excited about that. I'm going to introduce financial trauma, cycles of money avoidance. I'm going to provide a cultural lens on financial trauma, which I think is super important to this conversation. We're going to talk about effective counseling techniques. I'll introduce my trust framework, and then I will take the opportunity to pause and process. That's where I'll introduce the survey. So I don't want to talk too much about myself, but this is a brief summary. I am a financial therapist and accredited financial counselor, like I said, over a decade of experience in financial services and education. I'm also an author, Forbes columnist, and a speaker with a focus on financial trauma, financial therapy, and holistic financial wellness. I'm AFC certified and a certified practitioner for the trauma of money method. So, money shame. I have a very basic definition here. You guys have already let me know that you have worked with individuals who have demonstrated money shame. If you agree with this very basic definition, put a 1 in the chat. The feeling of humiliation or distress related to one's financial situation. Yeah, I see a lot of 1s. So we're going to move on. So when we look at common sources of money shame, at the top of the list, I have debt here. There's also poor financial decisions, societal comparisons, and cultural taboos. Debt, I think, is an obvious kind of entry point, right? The culture that we navigate here in this country is one that is heavily focused on the acquisition of debt, whether that be through a lens that is usually associated with positive feelings, right? Business loans, business lines of credit, owning real estate, etc., or a negative lens, which is usually associated with credit card debt. When you're working with individuals who, particularly at this stage, or rather at this age of the economy, right, who have taken on debt because they felt like in that moment that was the best thing for them to do, there can be, and very often is, associated shame with them making that decision because of the culture that we kind of buy into around debt is bad. And so we have some financial educators, some financial influencers, I don't want to say any names, who demonize people who use debt. And because some of the content that is delivered through that lens is beneficial in debt elimination or debt control strategies, they buy into this narrative that debt is bad. And as a result, they navigate carrying that debt with a sense of shame. Of course, we have poor financial decisions. That is either due to, and I want to take a step back for a minute. As we define poor financial decisions from the lens of a financial educator, a financial coach, a CFP, a credentialed financial professional, we have to come to terms, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, come to terms with our definition of poor financial decisions and the client that we're working with definition of poor financial decisions. Because if they come to you, and this is going to be a theme throughout this presentation, if they come to you with values that are aligned to the decisions that they have made, and we are coming to them as credentialed professionals, as the quote unquote expert, and telling them that the decisions that they made was a bad financial decision, and they saw no way out of making that decision, then we are contributing to their money shame. I'm going to repeat that. If the individual's values were aligned to the decisions that they have made around money, and we as the expert come to them and say that their decisions were poor financial decisions, then we are contributing to their money shame. And so while I don't have it listed here on a common source of money shame, I want you guys to keep in mind, as financial professionals, as financial educators, that another big source of money shame are financial educators. And I want that to just kind of marinate as we walk through this presentation. Societal comparisons is also a big contributor to money shame. All of us, I'll be willing to bet, are on social media, right? We're scrolling, we see what the next person is doing. As financial educators, I'm sure we are not unfamiliar with the keeping up with the Joneses analogy. We probably all use that in our own educational styles. It's a lot easier to try to keep up with the Joneses if you're scrolling on Instagram and you see the next person is going on vacation, or the next person is going to a Chris Brown concert, or the next person is ... right? And so societal comparisons are going to contribute to money shame because the individual is feeling like they are not good enough, or they're not where they need to be, and they might feel inclined to make a decision that doesn't align to their values so that they can keep up with the next person. And then lastly, cultural taboos. As I think about cultural taboos, we usually, when we hear culture, we associate culture with our race or ethnicity, maybe our country of origin. We don't often look at culture through a lens of work culture, right? How we show up, what we wear, how we talk, where we go. Do we participate in happy hour? When we come home, what does the home culture look like? What are familial expectations look like? What do relational expectations look like? And so when we talk about cultural taboos, some of the big cultural taboos that I want you guys to think about in this conversation are around bankruptcy, right? There's a big negative stigma associated with bankruptcy. So individuals who may need to file for bankruptcy will not even consider looking in the direction of pursuing insight or professional advice on whether or not this is right for them because of the taboo associated with it. Food stamps or other forms of government subsidies, Section 8. There's a lot of shame associated with individuals. Certainly when I was growing up, there was, with individuals who are participating in these programs. And more than that, there is on the other side of that shame, almost these blatant attacks, right? To individuals, families, communities that have to use these subsidies in order to survive. And so they're in a situation where they have to make the right decision for them and their family. But because of the cultural taboos associated, they either will do it kind of like on the low, like really, they won't tell anybody about it, or they will avoid doing it because of the affiliated shame. On the other side of the screen, we're looking at some of the impacts of money shame, and this is more of my area of focus and interest, right? What does the impact look like from a nervous system regulation perspective, right? How do we react to these feelings of shame? Well, we can go into emotional distress, we can go into secrecy, and we can go into avoidant behaviors. Who here is familiar with avoidant behaviors? Have you heard this phrase before? I'm just gonna look in the chat. I see a lot of engagement here. Jeff D says, say that with your chest. Culture, culture, culture. Julie says, I love how well this vibes with money scripts. Nandita says, financial decisions are not made in a vacuum. Culture and values have a large influence on our decision making. Amen. Oh, I went back about before. Yeah, I see a couple people saying don't open mill. We're gonna get to that in just a second. I want to introduce you guys very briefly to financial trauma. Now, this is my claim to fame. Financial trauma is the area that I specialize in. And financial trauma is approached through a couple of different lenses, and I'm going to introduce some of those lenses to you. From a clinical perspective, so we're looking at this through the lens of academics, through the lens of psychotherapists. The definition that I have on the screen here, psychological distress caused by financial instability or crisis over time, is pretty well accepted as a definition of financial trauma. I do not disagree with this definition. But I think that there is nuance that is missing from the conversation here. And we'll get to that when we talk about cultural lens on financial trauma. But for the sake of introducing this topic to you, if you've not heard of financial trauma before, this is a good working definition. And this is likely a definition that is going to be similar to what you see online if you were to search what is financial trauma. And through this clinical lens, I want to introduce you guys to big T trauma and little T trauma. So big T trauma, these are major flashpoint experiences that are going to have an impact on nervous system regulation, on behavior around money, on how you view money. These are usually poverty, hunger, vulnerability to crime. We think about the Great Recession and COVID, how that impacted us. We think about bankruptcy, divorce, foreclosure, experiencing homelessness, theft or robbery, and unemployment as major instances that may kind of cause PTSD-like reaction to your experiences, right? And then we have little T trauma, which oftentimes as financial professionals, we might overlook because they're not true to our experiences. And so when we talk about sitting in the seat as the professional, I want to introduce you guys to this idea of transference and countertransference that we hear about in the world of financial therapy or in mental health models, where we are projecting onto our client some of the values or the experiences that we may have had, painful or otherwise, and not allow them to show up as themselves with their experiences and validating their experiences. When we talk about little T trauma, we might have observed as a child our parents fighting about money. We might have observed as a child our parents stressed out about money. We might have observed as a child or experienced in our adulthood living paycheck to paycheck or going into a retail therapy shame cycle. We might navigate some of those money taboos that I talked about a little bit earlier. We might go into hypervigilance around workaholism. And I'm going to talk about vigilance a little bit more, but I wanted to introduce that as kind of the extreme other side of, or rather a reaction to experiencing trauma. We might exist in a toxic work culture. And I can relate to this. Actually, if you can relate to navigating a toxic work culture, drop a 1 in the chat. The reason why I went into private practice as an entrepreneur, and I just celebrated 3 years full-time entrepreneurship, is because of a toxic work culture. Ironically, because I was pursuing building out a personal brand around doing exactly what it is that I'm doing right now. So toxic work culture can absolutely contribute to financial trauma, because when I decided that I was going to leave the workplace, I walked away from secure income. I walked away from security by way of income, right? I had to navigate kind of the ebbs and flows of what entrepreneurship brought me, but I felt like that was my only way out, because it was being in that environment was causing me to experience some mental and emotional distress. And then lastly, I have here intergenerational financial support can cause little T trauma. So how many of you guys have heard of the sandwich generation? Right now, I believe my mom falls into that category, right? The sandwich generation, they are your Gen Xers. They may be taking care of their older parents, and they may be preparing for their children to go into college, while also juggling the responsibility of trying to plan for their own retirement, right? Some of the older millennials might be approaching that stage as well as a sandwich generation, right? They may be noticing that their Gen X parents are getting old, right? They may be having conversations about, do you have a will? Do you have any kind of estate plan? What does medical proxy look like? And so some of that intergenerational financial support can cause financial trauma because it is introducing, going back to this definition that we have here, psychological distress caused by financial instability, because you're burning the candle at both ends. You're trying to take care of yourself, you're trying to take care of your parents, you're trying to take care of your children, and there is not enough, or at least there's the feeling that there is not enough. And so I want you guys to think about big T trauma, little T trauma as it relates to your own experiences, but also as it relates to the individuals who may be sitting across from you, whether that be virtually, whether that be in person. These individuals, and I don't know if I shared this statistic with you in this presentation or not. I usually kind of lead with this, but by the age of 7, most of our attitudes and beliefs about money are solidified, right? So if we look at these first 2 bullet points, the parents fighting around money, the parents stressed out about money, even the third bullet point, parents living in a paycheck to paycheck cycle. At the age of 7, we are observing and we are coming to conclusions around money. And so when we talk about little T trauma, like this is a big trauma. Even if you are even if your experience isn't true to parents fighting about money or parents stressed out about money, maybe you came from an environment of affluence. Your perspective on money is going to be informed by coming from that environment of affluence. So you might go into adulthood thinking, well, I don't have to worry about anything with money. And then adulting hits and you have to worry about money. That can be a traumatic experience for you. And that can likely be a traumatic experience for the clients that you serve. So I created this graphic here to just kind of illustrate the cycle of money avoidance, right? So if we look at this far left side, you'll see financial stressor will occur, and then there will be an emotional response to that financial stress. When we think about the way that our brains are hardwired as human beings, right? And the primitive versions of ourselves where we had to operate in a state of survival, fight or flight. That reaction, that wiring is still true to our experience today. We will experience with money a fight or flight response that recognizes a situation or instance that we are faced with as a danger. Different from the primitive versions of human beings who are maybe hunting, right? And they're navigating the wilderness and they come up against a wolf or a tiger or a lion. Once that stressor is gone, their normal brain functions start to regulate. These are pinpointed to the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thought, and the back of your brain, the amygdala, which is responsible for that fight or flight response. Why does this matter? In today's world, when we are late on a payment, when we are bombarded by mail, when we are getting the phone call from the bill collector, when we did not file our taxes, we are perceiving a threat. The issue is that threat doesn't just go away and we go back to this state of normal regulation. So we may avoid that threat, right? And so fight or flight, we're flighting, right? We're taking the flight route, and the problem stays there, contributing to financial stress, contributing to financial anxiety, contributing to financial shame. Why didn't I not pay my bill? Why can I not pay my bill? Why am I not making enough money? Am I not good enough? Etc. And so the emotional response to that financial stressor will likely lead into an avoidant behavior. So you see in the towards the bottom of that little image there, there's a person, he's kind of like, I don't want to look at it, right? He's putting his head in the sand. I don't want to preach at you guys. Give me some examples in the chat of avoidant behaviors. Based off of your experience with individuals or based off of your own experience, what are some of the avoidant behaviors that you might demonstrate? And I'm going to get caught up on the chat. Yeah, I see a lot of not looking at bills, not looking at the credit card statement, not checking mail or email, ignoring the bills, not looking at the bank account, canceling our meetings. Yes, thank you, Allison, for sharing that. Individuals will avoid the person that is designed, that the person that is there to help them because they are experiencing the shame, ignoring phone calls, not filing taxes. Yes, not answering phone calls, lying to partners. Yes, thank you very much for that. Continuing not to file taxes for 10 years. Only paying the minimum balances. Hiding debt. Spending elsewhere. I want to, this is the answer that, this is one of the answers that I was looking for. All of these answers are great. Spending elsewhere. Some people, believe it or not, will go into an avoidant response by gambling, by buying alcohol or drugs, by basically trying to forget about their problems. And so the avoidant behavior not only stops at, well, I'm not going to pay attention to the fact that I have this financial obligation or this task ahead of me. It will sometimes go into more spending, overspending, which can look like gambling, like I said, which can look like alcohol consumption, happy hour. Like what is the reason why we're going to happy hour, right? Happy hour could be considered a cultural norm from one perspective, but could also be considered an avoidant behavior. And so that avoidant behavior will lead to negative financial consequences and increased shame and trauma, which will then go back to contributing to the financial stressor, the emotional response, and we see this cycle repeating itself over and over and over again, right? So I have here at the bottom, financial shame and trauma lead to avoidance, which results in neglecting financial responsibilities and worsening the situation. Yep, I see self-medication through drugs and alcohol, spending windfalls such as tax refunds on material things rather than paying on debt. I really like this answer, Julie, because I have been familiarized with a circumstance where individual did not pay their rent for, let's call it 6 months. And then they go and they work. They make enough money to get caught up. They get caught up and then they allow themselves to fall back into these arrears around paying their rent. Not sure what was going on there. This individual is not my client. This is a story that was told to me. But that is also an avoidant behavior. Now, as we think about these avoidant behaviors, we also have to think about, well, what is causing these avoidant behaviors? Again, at the beginning of this here, we have financial stressors, we have the emotional response. I see a comment here, isn't some of it habitual? Absolutely. Sometimes it's easier to do what you're familiar with, but is going to cause you harm than it is to do something that's different, even though it's going to make your situation better. And that's what a lot of our jobs are here today and every day as we serve the clients that we serve, whether you're a CFP professional, whether you're AFC, whether you're a financial therapist. A lot of the work that we do is to help, and I'll get into this more as we move through this presentation, but to help point out what is the behavior and interrupt it. And so I told you guys a little bit earlier about putting this cultural lens on financial trauma. And as you guys look at this slide and you kind of glance over the emboldened texts, I also want to talk about the reason why an individual may not seek out your help. Oftentimes, the individual not seeking out your help as a CFP professional or AFC or a financial therapist or financial coach is not because of you specifically, but because of what you represent to that individual. I want to focus on this top line, right? Institutional trauma. So there are individuals, there are communities of individuals who have navigated institutional abuse through financial institutions, right? Maybe they had their money in the bank. Maybe they had their money in the stock market. Maybe they were working with a financial professional. And at the end of their experience, or what ended their experience working with those individuals or institutions, was trauma, right? They did not have anything to say for the money that they put in the bank. They did not have anything. They could not collect on the life insurance that they put in. They put money into over extended period of time. Maybe they were discriminated against in the home buying process. Institutional trauma. And so I have bulleted here: racism and systemic oppression contribute to financial instability and trauma. Period. And I want to also add, as we talk about this lens, that these reactions to trauma are justified, right? They are not unjustified reactions. And so, as the professional, it's important for us to recognize that an individual may want your services, but feel like they can't pursue your services because they don't trust the system. And we have to acknowledge that their mistrust in the system is justified. And so that leads into the second bullet point: non-participation in financial systems. Again, historical and ongoing discrimination results in mistrust and exclusion from traditional financial systems. That includes our current modern day banks, right? How many times has Wells Fargo been in the news in the last, I want to say 2 years, but in the last 5 years for their discriminatory practices or for opening accounts without the consent of their members? How many times have Bank of America been in the news? JP Morgan Chase admitted that the institution that they're built on were is where they are today as a result of their participation in slavery in this country. And so I have this bullet point here that speaks to epigenetic research. It's a fascinating topic. I'm not encouraging anybody to go out and become an expert on these things, but I do think that it's really important for us to be aware of this vocabulary and of this work, because this work validates these experiences, right? Epigenetic research shows that trauma, including financial trauma, can affect the way that genes are expressed and passed down through generations, right? So somebody who is experiencing financial trauma 100 years ago is going to have an impact on your current experiences with financial trauma today. And then the behavioral expressions of trauma, and I'm just trying to be mindful of the time, so I'm going to move on. Behavioral expressions of trauma: prolonged exposure to poverty can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and behaviors such as avoidance and vigilance, right? We think about individuals or communities or families that have a history of experiencing poverty and existing in this state of survival. I talked about that fight or flight response that we were hardwired with as primitive humans, and the regulation of that response once the threat is no longer present. But what if the threat is always present, right? What if you live the first 18 years, the first 30 years, the first 50 years of your life in a state of constant survival? That is going to have an impact on not only what you believe is possible for yourself and for your family financially, but it's going to have an impact on how you navigate your day to day. And so I won't paint a colorful picture with examples of what that looks like. So I want to keep this light. But when we think about, especially in the world of pro bono services, when we think about the kind of clients that you're going to attract doing the pro bono work, we have to think about what is the weight, what is the what are they carrying with them into these interactions? How much bravery do they have to come and sit down and have a conversation with you? How much fear are they addressing in sitting down and hoping that you're going to give them a lifeline? And to be clear, it's not your responsibility to save them, but understand that sometimes these individuals may be coming to you with the idea that it is your responsibility to save them. And so being able to point to this work, point to this research, partner with individuals who specialize in this work is super important. You, again, you don't have to be the expert on all of these topics. You just have to know that these topics exist, and you just have to know how to reach out to the professional who can supplement the work that you are doing as the professional. And so you guys may remember this slide from a couple of slides ago. I have redefined financial trauma with a cultural lens. This is a Rakim Sabri definition. This is the working definition that I've been using since 2019. Financial trauma is any instance observed or experienced that has a negative impact on the way you view, interact with, or believe about money. So different from the clinical definition that says financial, psychological distress caused by financial instability or crisis, you may not be the individual who are experiencing the financial instability or crisis. That does not mean that you are immune or that you are not going to experience financial trauma or that you are not experiencing financial trauma. We go back to the slide where we look at big T trauma and little t trauma. It is reasonable to accept that all of us, the financial professionals included, are navigating various forms of financial trauma all the time. I'm going to repeat that. It is reasonable to accept that all of us, including the financial professional, are navigating various forms of financial trauma all the time. And so this definition, I think, is a more nuanced definition. It incorporates some of the cultural variables to what individuals might be experiencing. We are not psychotherapists, we are financial professionals. And through that lens, I think it's very important for us to be able to level with the people that we're working with and level with ourselves, that we are constantly experiencing some form or another of financial trauma and understanding the ways in which we can navigate experiencing that financial trauma. Cut the time really quickly. Okay. So this is a Rakim original, Disrupting the Cycle with the 3E framework. If you are familiar with me and my work, you have likely heard of the 3Es before. If you are not, welcome. When I came up with the 3E framework, it was before I was a trauma-informed financial professional. However, what I have found through becoming a trauma-informed financial professional is that it still holds true. And so the 3Es are exposure, education, and execution. And breaking that down, exposure is bringing awareness to the behavior, roadblock, or issue, right? So if you think back to the slide where we had this cycle of shame and avoidant behaviors, as a professional, by bringing awareness to this behavior, by bringing awareness to this cycle, we are now letting the individual know, hey, by the way, this is what you're doing, right? We talked about you setting up a budget. We talked about you doing whatever, right? Whatever the thing is. And you keep avoiding this. You keep ignoring my phone calls. You keep canceling our meetings. You keep not opening your mail. This is not coming from a place of judgment or chastisement. I'm just pointing out to you, this is what the behavior is. You are articulating to me that you want to change. You're sitting here with me because you want to leverage the professional expertise that I can bring to the table. Well, this is the first step in healing from that journey. We're going to interrupt this cycle by making you aware that this cycle exists. So if we jump down to the bottom of the page, we don't always know why we do what we do or how to stop doing it. Education is the next part of the framework, we're going to use education as a form of intervention. So we're going to tell them, how do they interrupt their cycle, right? There was a point made earlier where we talked about how individuals will I forgot what the specific point was, and I wouldn't be able to find it. But using education as a form of intervention is basically letting the individual know, after we bring awareness to the issue, how we can disrupt this comfortable reaction. That's what it was. I said that individuals will do the thing that is harmful to them because it is uncomfortable for them. So now we're going to provide them with the education around how to disrupt this cycle. And then the last phase is execution. And execution is simply empowering the subject by providing them the necessary supports. Necessary supports are you, the professional. You are the necessary support, whether you are the financial coach, the AFC, the CFP, the financial therapist. You are there to help hold their hand through the process. And your job as the professional, and some people may not like this, but your job as a professional is to get your person, your client, to a place where they don't need you anymore. Your job as a professional is to get your client to a place where they don't need you anymore, but that they want to have you around, right? It's irresponsible for this individual, for the individual that you work with, to come to you and just defer all of the responsibility to you for managing their financial life at whatever level that looks like, whether that's a planning relationship, whether that is a crisis intervention relationship for the AFCs in the room. It is your job to get them to a place where they can make decisions from a place of informed education on their own, but that they want to leverage your expertise because you have expertise. So 3 E's, I'm just going to reiterate real quickly: exposure, education, execution. It's easy for you guys to remember. Okay, so we're going to jump into effective counseling techniques. And I think we're coming close to the end of this presentation. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to do some Q&A and for us to talk about this, because I think this is important. But it's important for us to build trust by creating a safe and non-judgmental space. We talked about this. It's important for us to demonstrate empathy and validation. So you are the expert on this topic, but your client is the expert on their life. I'm going to repeat that. You are the expert on the matters of what it is that you have expertise in. Your client is the expert on their life. And so when we talk about how we may contribute to the shame that the individual is experiencing as the professional, because we are the expert and we're sitting across the desk pointing the finger saying, you should have done or you should be doing, we have to acknowledge that what decisions they have made in that moment may be what they felt like was the best thing for them to do at the time. And so we need to approach their decision-making with empathy, with validation, say, I understand why you made that decision. I understand that you felt like there was nothing you could do differently. Let's talk about ways to avoid this from happening in the future. Or let's talk about what you would have done differently now that you're not in a crisis situation. Let's talk about how I can be a partner to you. I did not go over the acronym TRUST yet. Let's talk about how I can be a partner to you moving forward. Gradual exposure, I think that's super self-explanatory. We want to introduce topics slowly. We do not want to overwhelm our client. A lot of times, as we as professionals kind of want to flex our professional acumen, right? We might use terms, jargon, we might make reference to products, services from a place of really overpowering the individual because they don't have any other knowledge. And so we want to be sure that they're receiving this content with gradual exposure so that they're not getting overwhelmed, so that they don't jump into that avoidant behavior, because understand that moving forward with you and establishing trust is fragile. And anything outside of your control or within your control can disrupt the fragile nature of helping them move from a place of financial shame or financial trauma. And I think education and empowerment is self-explanatory. We want to provide clients with knowledge and tools to take control of their finances. All right, so for the individual who asked about the acronym TRUST, I created this just for you guys. Like literally as I was building this presentation, I created this. Building trust is taking a trauma-informed approach to relationship building, unpacking internalized biases, providing supportive frameworks like the 3 E's that I just mentioned to you guys, and training and continuous improvement. You guys are here today because you are committed to training and continuous improvement. You're going to get your CE credits for sitting through this presentation. But in addition to this presentation, as a requirement of carrying the designation that you carry, you may be taking training throughout the year that keeps you up to date on trends, approaches, new information, etc. And that is an integral part of this trust framework because you may not have heard about epigenetic research in the past. You may not be familiar with how institutional trauma shows up or may show up in the clients that you serve. You may not have known that most of the ideas and attitudes that we have around money are established by the time we're 7 years old. So you're fighting, or I don't want to use the word fighting, but you're going up against sometimes decades of programming and conditioning when you just think you're meeting John Doe across the desk and you're going to give them some information and you're going to talk about the planning of their life. So trust, trauma-informed approach, relationship building, unpacking internalized biases, supportive frameworks, training, and continuous improvement. All right, this is the moment that we've been waiting for. I want you guys to pause and process this. You are likely on a computer or a tablet of some sort, so you have access to your phone. I want you to give me feedback on what it is that I've talked about today. Please scan this QR code with your phone and use the code FFP when prompted so that you can get access to these slides for future reference. This survey is also going to tell me how I did in delivering this content. This survey is going to let me know whether or not you're interested in hearing more content like this. And we'll talk about towards the end of this presentation what that looks like as far as working together. I want to shout out Nathan Astle, who's also a financial therapist. He has created a blueprint with the Financial Therapy Clinical Institute that brings in the expertise of CFPs, of AFCs, and of financial therapists. And that model triages on different levels. So as I had mentioned to you guys earlier, you don't have to be the expert at everything. You do not have to go out and become a trauma-informed professional by way of credential, by way of education. You just have to have exposure to the fact that these things exist and know where to reach out to individuals who specialize in this work and form a partnership. And so part of the work that I do is working with planners, working with institutions, working with individuals around bringing this trauma-informed lens on financial trauma, financial stress, these avoidant tendencies that individuals have, and really kind of addressing the behavior. Could you please put the website in the chat? Sure. Thank you, thank you. And then again, FFP is the code for this specific presentation so that you guys can get access to the slides. And this presentation is also recorded, so I do believe you guys will get an opportunity to run it back. And so if you missed this, when we move forward, you guys will have the opportunity, like I said, to do the survey in the future. All right, so here's a summary slide. I don't need to repeat all of this for you guys because I think I did a really good job, but I just wanted to have it there so that you could view it all in one place if you wanted to take a picture of it or screenshot it. But let's jump into the Q&A section of this. We have about 10 minutes left. So I think that that's plenty of time for us to address some of these questions. And I'm going to leave this slide up with my shameless plug. If you are interested in bringing this expertise in financial therapy to your organization or firm, I would love to connect. You can reach me at my website, my email partner at rockhamstabreed.com, or I am very active on LinkedIn. And then I also have 2 books, Financially Irresponsible and The Flow Workbook. So let's jump into the Q&A.
Thank you so much. I'm encouraging everyone to put their questions in the Q&A and we'll get through as many as we can. I felt like this presentation was amazing, extremely relevant and very important. I love seeing all the connections that our audience made with their clients, with their family members, friends, and with themselves. So thank you again. I'm going to start running through some of the questions. What are some of the strategies to break the retail therapy shame cycle?
Yeah, so we talked about that. That was the 3E model is the framework that I'm introducing. This is my framework, so I'm sure that there are other things there, but I think that really simplifies the intervention process. We want to bring awareness to the fact that this is a behavior that's taking place through exposure. We want to provide them with education on ways to kind of interrupt that, right? So really this behavior is a symptom of a stimulus, right? If you think back to that diagram that I had earlier on, they're experiencing a financial stressor or some kind of stimulus that is encouraging to respond emotionally. So maybe you as, and I don't know, Allison, if you are a CFP, AFC, or financial coach, but maybe you can introduce the fact that this is a behavior and maybe you don't feel comfortable kind of going into the behavioral side of, well, what is the root cause of this? That's a great opportunity for you to build a relationship with an AFC or a financial therapist who can address some of that behavioral, some of those behavioral impulses while you focus on the numbers.
Thank you. There were many questions about the establishing money beliefs by the age of 7. Is there any additional research or resources that you can provide on that topic? Julie Mull also commented that many parents are not nearly as well established when their kids are that young. And like, do you think this makes us overly anxious about money overall in our society?
Yeah, I love that question. So as far as research goes, I know that the Clances, Brad Clance and Ted Clance are pioneers in financial therapy research. I'm pretty sure that they have information out there. So if you just search Dr. Brad Clance or Ted Clance, there are journals that kind of speak to the money scripts that they coined and how those money scripts kind of come to be. If you're not really heavy on the academic side of, wanting to read, I do believe that there's some statistics readily available if you kind of like search in Google, when are our money beliefs established, or search that statement by the age of 7, money beliefs are established, and you'll see kind of more research that points to that. That is not original Rakim Sabri research. I'm just citing research that I'm familiar with. As far as the statement around parents not really being established by that age and contributing to financial anxiety, I want to take the lens off the parent in that answer, and rather in my answer, and put the lens on the reaction to our society, right? We are constantly reacting to the cultural norms that come as a result of existing in a capitalist society, that come as a result of existing in this culture of consumerism, that force us to make what feels like in the moment life or death decisions. And so I'm going to use myself as an avatar for this example. My parents were 17 and 18 years old when I was born. If you can imagine being 17 to 18 years old with a child and having to make financial decisions, you can't even make financial decisions that would be considered financially irresponsible for yourself at that age. And so, yes, it speaks to the importance of financial literacy. I think that that's super important. Yes, it speaks to the importance of having financial professionals available. But thank you, Wendy, for pointing out the the typo. Yes, I'm missing an E. But yes, I interrupted my train of thought. But take the blame off of the parents and put the blame on our reactions to society. And unfortunately, there's not much that we could do about that, outside of showing up and being who it is that we are to these individuals, going out and doing the work. A major plug back to the foundation for financial planning, doing some of the pro bono work or helping to contribute to the pro bono work through the gifts and partnering with individuals who like focus on this as kind of their realm of expertise.
Do you use an intake survey that measures financial trauma?
I do not use an intake survey that measures financial trauma. Me personally, I allow the individual to tell me their financial trauma, right? So I will ask them questions, pointed questions about their experiences, and I will be able to point out to them, oh, sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. I will be able to point out to them, hey, this is consistent with how financial trauma is defined. I think that because financial trauma exists on a spectrum, it's really hard to do it in that way, unless we're looking at it through a purely clinical lens and we say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, have you experienced extreme financial stress in the last 6 months, right? I don't like that approach to measuring financial trauma, but certainly individuals probably do and can do that work.
Thank you. Let's try to. Can you talk a little bit about getting credentialed to become a financial therapist?
Yeah, I knew that this question was coming. So financial therapy is an emerging field. I'm super passionate about financial therapy and super passionate about the Financial Therapy Association. Financial Therapy Association is the organization that is trying to standardize financial therapy as a practice. That said, financial therapy is not a regulated field. So it's kind of like financial coaching, right? Technically, anybody can call themselves a financial therapist. That can be dangerous, right? Especially if they are not taking the initiative to learn about some of these concepts, some of these studies, some of these approaches to what ultimately we define as financial therapy. Financial therapy is its own discipline, so it's not a specialty of psychotherapy, although some therapists and social workers would like to claim it as such. There are financial therapists who have a background in financial planning. They're coming from a financial discipline. I myself come from a financial discipline. There are financial therapists who come from a background in mental health. I will plug up the FTA, Financial Therapy Association, as kind of the point of reference because I'm a member of the Financial Therapy Association and I appreciate the work that they do. But there are several designations out there that kind of speak to the psychology of money, right? I talked about Brad Klontz and Ted Klontz earlier. They have the financial behavioral specialist designation. There is the CFT1, which is a certified financial therapist through the FTA. There is financial social work designations. There is a trauma of money designation, which is not technically financial therapy, but is heavy focus on understanding a lot of what we talked about, right? This nervous system regulation, somatic practices to help kind of bring you into the present. That program is really built on addiction recovery, more so than financial therapy, but it's a program that I've participated in and that I've went through. So I definitely recommend that. But technically, there's nobody saying that individuals can't call themselves a financial therapist. Ethically, I don't know that it makes sense for individuals to go out and use that title in the way that they do financial coach without really going through some of the educational models that exist out there to first of all, from an ethics perspective, but also just from an educational perspective.
We're at time. Thank you so much, Rakeem. This has been amazing. Very much appreciated. I learned so much from this. We have so many other questions, but I think we'll have to move those to another time and place. Again, if you're a AFC in the audience, you can report your continuing education credit to AFCPE using the code FSP12, and we put that in the chat. We'll send an email out afterwards. The Foundation for Financial Planning will report CE credit to the CFP board for all the CFPs in the audience. And again, I want to thank you so much. And I also want to thank AFCPE, the Association of Financial Counseling and Planning Education, for connecting us. Again, this has been amazing, super helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for your time, for your attention, for your engagement. If you did not complete the survey, I would encourage you to complete the survey so that you can get access to the slides. And yes, this was recorded, so you should be able to get access to the recording to review at your leisure.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.